What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel Anime Fiction. I am back with a new episode of What If Naruto Was the Emperor of DC Universe Part 1. And if you did enjoy this video, give this video a like for the next part. And if you're new to my channel and like my content, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 1 Naruto was fighting Nagato Uzumaki in the remote recesses of a forest some miles from Konoha. His victory brought an end to their war, but at a high cost. Naruto was overwhelmed with wrath as he witnessed the numerous deaths of his people. His body was trembling from restraint, and the Kyuubi's chakra was leaking, giving him the appearance of a demon. Nonetheless, Naruto was a professional, and he kept his cool. He'd already lost everything, and now he had the enemy in his grip. He sought answers, but first he had to prove to his grandfather that he was wrong. "I agree with you that I may have taken the wrong approach, but I do not believe in you. I do not believe you are capable of leading the world to peace. You have not lived through true suffering. You have not lived through hard choices. You have not seen the world. You are just a little child living in a dream world. You think I am vile, but you have never come across true evil. Humans are the vilest creatures that you can find, but they think themselves." Naruto fixed his gaze on his, understanding what Nagato was saying but not agreeing. The opponent was attempting to portray Naruto as an inexperienced child, despite the fact that he had been in the field since he was a child. As those memories had been implanted into him by the Yamanaka, he had personally witnessed the vilest monsters and horrible activities. He was Konoha's ultimate warrior, and no one had spared anything for him. "Then I just need to see the world like our master, and what do you mean I don't understand pain? You killed everyone I loved, and now you tell me I don't understand pain. Remember that you are only alive because I have a need for you," Naruto said, holding back from murdering the pitiful creature. Nagato chuckled at his reaction. "I could be cruel and let you understand and grow, but we don't have time. You are too weak and it will take too long for you to be strong enough to handle Madara, so I will send you somewhere he can never reach, but in exchange I will bring back everyone I killed today." He had known what Naruto had gone through when he was a child being guided by grown-ups. Naruto had yet to experience life without being directed. Fighting Naruto and hearing his remarks gave Nagato some confidence in his approach and made him realize that he had been blinded by the negative side of the world. He'd been corrupted by Madara's dark whispers, but it was too late now. He was dying, and the opponent was too powerful for Naruto to defeat. What? Naruto was surprised and optimistic as his fury subsided. He filled the gap between them by placing his hands on Nagato's shoulder. "Can you really do that?" Naruto inquired, forgetting the first part of Nagato's sentence as hope for rebirth overtook him. Today he had lost everything, his folks, friends, and family. He'd never been alone before in his life. He'd never lost so many folks before. It had already affected him hard when his grandfather died for the third time, followed by Asuma and Jiraiya. He hadn't even begun to weep for Jiraiya when Pain launched a surprise attack, and he was powerless to prevent such a large-scale strike from decimating the hamlet. The folks did not even put up a fight. Except for a few survivors, they had no idea what had hit them. "Yes, but you have to promise that you will leave this world. You still need to see the world, and you won't be able to do that if you stay here because Madara is going to start moving. He is too strong for anyone to resist, and we might have a chance if we worked together, but sadly I was too lost in my path, and now my life is at an end," Nagato replied with a tired smile as he looked at his junior. He was relieved that there was still someone out there who could carry out their mission. Naruto, as someone who would try to bring the world to a peaceful conclusion, had demonstrated by his words and actions that he was on the correct track. He was someone who would never overstep his limitations. He was the type of person who would never overlook an injustice. He was someone who had been trained to lead others. His words and actions made them very plain. Nagato had been easily overpowered without relying on the Kyuubi and fought with his own powers, demonstrating the fruits of his training. Justice and peace were what Nagato desired, and Naruto was following in his footsteps. There was no falsehood involved when Naruto glanced at him and saw his expression as well as his emotions. Bringing his people and friends back in return for traveling away to an unfamiliar place was not even an option. "I'll go," Naruto said calmly, nodding. "Good." Nagato emitted a chakra pulse, and Naruto could once again feel the lives of his people. "They are alive, they are alive." Naruto couldn't believe it and smiled with delight, but he was jolted awake from his sleep. Now you can leave this world without much regret, Nagato whispered as Conan activated the seal, blinding them all and instantaneously transferring them. Where are we? Naruto said, his face emotionless and serene as he observed they were in a forest near a mountain. Because of his intensive shinobi training, it had become his default expression. He wasn't supposed to display his true feelings on his face. He used phony expressions to confuse his opponents. Even when he was hurt and contemplating withdrawal, he would laugh and jest. After many close ones died, he was forced to break character for a long period, but he was now back in full control. It's a new world where Madara can't follow us and take the Kyuubi, Conan said after Nagato had already fallen asleep. Her voice was full with pain as she pulled him up from his seat, where he had sat for decades since the Jubi Husk's usage. He'd become a cripple and would never be able to walk again. It was either the cause of the 6 paths of suffering, or Nagato himself was a more formidable foe since he possessed all of the powers in a single body. Nagato had long red hair, which was typical of the Uzumaki clan, but his appearance belied his youth, as he resembled a mummified body. He was so thin that his bones were visible through his skin. His life was filled with incessant emotional, mental, and bodily anguish. It was easy to see why he went insane. Naruto was exhausted, yet he still felt sympathy for his senior and relative. He'd been on an emotional roller coaster and been stranded in another universe, but his people were still alive, so he was little comforted. Looking at his partner, he could sense Conan's deep feelings and followed her. Conan had short, straight blue hair in a bun, gray eyes with lavender eyeshadow, and a labrae piercing. Conan had a diagonal line of eyelashes at the bottom corner of her eyes. Since she was a child, she had a huge light blue paper flower clipped to her bun. She was wearing the Akatsuki cloak and her Akatsuki ring on her right middle finger, with the kanji white on it. She also had her nails painted orange. She wore an exposing navy blue robe underneath the robe, with a big hemline on the front that showed her arms, back, lateral part of her breast, and belly, with her navel surrounded by 4 more piercings. Her headband was on her right hip. Instead of the usual sandals and leg warmers, she wore a pair of blue slacks that doubled as shoes, with white high heels, inverting the organization's regular color scheme. Since the nightmare began, she had become a stoic and quiet woman, the polar opposite of her joyful and happy personality before the nightmare. She disliked displaying emotions since they caused her grief. But she couldn't stop herself today. Her last surviving family member had perished. There is no way back, so give up on it. You will only endanger the world with your presence because Madara is untouchable and with the Kyuubi he will devastate the world, erasing countries from the map. So if you care about the people, then focus on gaining power before thinking of going back. Remember, he can follow us, so don't waste your time, Conan said in an emotional tone unlike her usual self as she held Nagato. Her last she was alone in this brutal world without him. Naruto mumbled sympathetically, grieve for your friend in silence. He had reclaimed what he had lost, but he would never see them again, thus this woman was his lone friend in this strange world. They were linked by their apprenticeship to the same master. She was 2 years his senior. She had lived a sad existence, but she was only saved from Naruto's grasp because she refused to participate in her group's nefarious activities. Conan had murdered, but she had never killed an innocent person. Naruto was aware of the group's activities because to the intelligence service entrusted to him by Jiraiya. His beliefs demanded that those responsible for the deaths of innocent people be executed. He had been trained from a young age to preserve fairness and justice. He was born to be a leader, to guide Konoha to greatness and to usher the world into a new era of peace and justice. He had been trained by Kakashi and the 3rd Hokage since he was a child before becoming a disciple of Jiraiya, who was similar to his grandfather. Life in Konoha had been interesting and demanding because he was always on the go, but the people adored him. Everyone cared about him, and he reciprocated. Naruto raced on to the objective of restoring peace to the world of perpetual warfare in memory of those smiles, words of encouragement, and lives lost. It was his fantasy. It was his passion, and he couldn't picture his life without it. Allowing Conan to lament in silence, Naruto reflected on his predicament, relieved but concerned about the future. He agreed with Nagato that he was still in his infancy and had yet to see the world. He had only visited a few places and had not encountered a wide range of events because he was of training age. Naruto was relieved that there were no threats within 100 miles as he walked alone in the wilderness while still in sage mode. Sage Mode was a technique that granted Naruto a tenfold increase in basic power. It was a technique that combined his chakra with natural energy from the outside world. The more chakra and natural energy Naruto utilized, the stronger he became, and the duration increased proportionally. It was a high-level skill that few people possessed, and the number could be counted by hand. Will they be okay? What if someone else attacks? Can I say I'll never see my buddies again? Naruto knew it was the right decision, but he felt the agony of the sacrifice. He was separated from his folks. His people had to live with one less guardian after losing Jiraiya. He was taught to stay cool and look for a solution at all times. He had learned from numerous people and represented Konoha as a whole. His childhood was far from typical since he was constantly surrounded by individuals who cared for his needs, preventing the Kyuubi from whispering its dark whispers into the young mind. The third Hokage had been very careful not to let the monster to taint Naruto, and everyone had agreed on it. Konoha was on its last legs after losing a quarter of its army along with Minato and Kushina, and they needed a replacement. They had always avoided using the Kyuubi, but there was no other option. Naruto was chosen to be their ultimate weapon and guardian. Konoha was familiar with all of the other Jinchuriki and the various approaches that had been tried. Kumo's family style has been the greatest. Hiruzen and Jiraiya benefited from this since they did not want Naruto to be treated as a weapon. Naruto became a member of each clan and was taught their talents. His education was accelerated, and he spent the majority of his time with adults. He had played with small children before, but they were too frail and fragile for him. Regardless, Naruto's family couldn't let him grow imperfect, so they led him through relationships. They honed his social abilities and encouraged the young Naruto to interact with others. They instilled in him the importance of communication. He couldn't stand looking down on them. He was expected to be humble and patient. As a result, he made new friends and learned how to appreciate life. This was affected further by his caregivers Kakashi, Hiruzen, Asuma, and Jiraiya. Naruto became an expert at reading people and comprehending them after obtaining such talents as his objective of bringing peace to the world began to take shape, since he disliked seeing others suffer. He appeared young, but thanks to the use of shadow clones, he had memories that spanned decades. With that, he was unbeatable on the same level, and his combat abilities were unparalleled. The issue with Madara was that his stats were unrivaled. The man had fought Hashirama, and both of them had altered the map. Their conflict has destroyed islands and mountain ranges. Naruto could only beat Madara's peak, which had been recorded using Sage Mode. However, that prime version was recorded 70 years ago, thus Madara would be technically stronger than ever if he survived to the present day. Naruto was a monster at his current age, but reality was brutal, and Madara wasn't about to de-age himself for a fair fight. Let's see, he's stronger than me, I say. His peak is about my level, and that was a long time ago, so he should be stronger today, with strange abilities. I'm not sure how to get back. I must submit to the Kyuubi. I need to get stronger before he finds me, and the Kyuubi's full cooperation could offer me an advantage in making my base stronger, but I'll need to obtain better skills or weapons. Naruto proceeded slowly, ready for any attack. His body was still in combat mode and hadn't totally relaxed, and he couldn't relax in an unknown setting. He was immersed in his thoughts, but his senses were still active, and he discovered a group of young adults camping nearby. There was no evidence of chakra within them. From the level of life force he sensed, they were completely normal humans. But Naruto could tell they weren't normal people by the way they moved. Did we somehow wind ourselves in a normal human world? Naruto inquired as he walked nearer the humans to get information using basic genjutsu, mind control. He didn't expect to know the language of an unfamiliar realm, but he tried nonetheless. Hello, Naruto said as he stepped into the clearing near the stream. Barbara and Richard Dick Grayson glanced at him, puzzled, because they didn't comprehend what he was saying. They were always on guard, but they didn't even notice him approaching them. Their first thought was that he was a ninja. He was also a meta-human. They were both trained persons who fought crime, so their initial instinct was to subdue him if he tried anything unusual. Listen to my words, and answer my questions, Naruto whispered as they were captured by the jutsu. He could tell they were ready to assault him if they thought he was too suspicious, making the encounter meaningless. It was genjutsu that used sound as its foundation. Naruto closed the gap between them and rested his hand on their heads, asking them to say what he wanted to hear and peer into their memories. He had also learned from other clans and was the most skilled due to his shadow clone abuse. Shadow clones were clones created by Naruto's chakra, and they were exact replicas of him. They shared his expertise and would transfer their memories to him in the event of his death or cancellation. The talent relied heavily on chakra, which was distributed according to the number of clones. The clones have the same degree of power as Naruto, but their endurance was determined by the amount of chakra they possessed. It was Naruto's skill that made him dominant, and no one could imitate it because they lacked the physique and chakra levels. Naruto's mind had been genetically modified to manage issues arising from the massive quantity of information he had absorbed, and he had learned numerous strategies to deal with pain and other cognitive concerns. Richard and Barbara stood out from the crowd with just one touch, and he could feel their body strength. They were born or genetically altered to be stronger than normal humans. Naruto couldn't tell unless he checked their memories or spoke with them. Naruto used the Yamanaka technique and genjutsu to ask them simple questions ranging from their names to information about the world. The man's name was Richard John Grayson, and the woman's name was Barbara Gordon. Richard was a gorgeous man with a superb lean-muscled figure. He had blue eyes and black hair. He was in his 20s, but he was consumed by worry. Barbara was a lovely young lady with long red hair and green eyes. She, like Richard, had a flawlessly fit body built for war. She was at the same age as Richard and was more outgoing, albeit they both had concerns. They were close friends who trained at the dojo together, which explains why their bodies appeared so prepared for combat. They were there for a picnic and to get away from the city's bustle. Richard hoped to discuss his relationship issues with Barbara because they were so close. These two were typical, yet this universe was anything but. There were monsters, aliens, and mutants everywhere. The world was so full with crime that it made his universe appear holy in comparison. It was a place hanging by a thread because there were so many powerful entities in the globe, and these beings somehow found reasons to wreak havoc on Earth. The world was fortunate to have so many altruistic people willing to battle for them. Unfortunately, these heroes appear to be afraid of stepping too far beyond the confines of the world and would never kill the criminals inflicting the damage, while the government appeared to be playing the game as the villains did not receive the death penalty despite escaping multiple times. It was a strange world, and a filthy one at that. It was more evolved than his world, but the people were far more wretched. Naruto could tell from the situation that this planet was harmful for him at his level. He couldn't really trust the heroes either, as they would almost certainly cause him further troubles. He could utilize them from the shadows, but he would never associate with them. The scenario was perilous, yet he was unconcerned and relieved after reading the data because he had virtually determined that it was a regular world. Normal life would be disastrous for him since he would lack practice partners and perilous bouts to help him progress. He didn't have infinite time or anything to grow slowly, and the potential was only adequately exploited through battles. In the modern world, he faced a wide range of opponents from whom he might learn and vanquish. He has numerous options for strengthening himself by obtaining technology and world knowledge. All of these are reasons why he would battle in the current world, and he will not spare the heroes. They appear to be in need of a wake-up call, so if he had the opportunity to teach them, he would do it for the betterment of the planet. Naruto intended to clear away anything he could from this world while he was here. He symbolized justice and fairness no matter where he traveled. He couldn't just sit back and let evil flourish. He could tell from these recollections that there were many valuable things for him and even people he could tame for his war against Madara. Madara, according to his understanding, should be at least in the ranges of a country destroyer based on his level of development. It was said that the conflict between him and Hashirama caused a kingdom to vanish. His Susanoo slashed through mountains like tofu, and it was enormous. Naruto was capable of destroying a big city or a small country at the time, but he had no counter to Madara's Mangekyo ability to go intangible. Madara also possessed the time reversal skill, which Hashirama documented. The opponent has talents that Naruto lacked at the time and was powerful enough to eliminate him in under a minute. Normal training would take him at least 3 years to get to that point, but he didn't believe he had that much time. To be sure, he had to do everything in 2 years, kill him, and burn his body. With Sage Mode training, my power should rise faster and finish in 2 years. The problem is that this assumption only takes Madara's previous level into account. He has 60 years to train and become better. He can't possibly be at this level anymore. I'm guessing he now has the power to destroy the entire land of fire. He refused to use his ability to take over the world in order to avoid violence. It appears he truly intends to exploit the immortal illusion from stories. Naruto vanished into the jungle, leaving Barbara and Richard unaware of his presence. Throughout his life, he had practiced and gained a variety of skills. One of them was the old legends that were incredibly valuable to the shinobi. They were related to the six-path sage. He had learned from them that the Biju were the sage's creation, and that together they formed a ferocious apocalyptic beast that would kill the world. There was also talk about the immortal queen, who governed the planet and brought forth a calm era. There was even talk of beginning the process with eternal illusion in a massive tree. Jiraiya and Naruto had previously deduced from these hints and the Akatsuki's powers that they intended to fuse the Biju into one. Meeting Pain and learning about Madara provided him with the final piece of the puzzle that allowed them to achieve their ultimate goal. Madara desired to bring peace to the cursed planet, but he was haughty, proud, and warlike. His ideas included raining blood on this world and conquering it. The man was a lunatic and one of the main reasons why the world became even more messed up, since he ruined the delicate balance, as Hashirama's death was partly his responsibility. If he had just collaborated with Hashirama, the world would have been at peace because no one could have stood up to their combined might at the time. If he had so much power, why didn't he just try to take over the planet from the shadows one by one? I'll never understand insane bastards, Naruto reflected as he walked deeper into the forest toward Konan. The young adults, on the other hand, resumed their activities without recognizing what had just occurred. Despite having their memories scanned, they were unconcerned due to Dr. Fate's magical seal. Batman was always cautious, especially after having his memories read. He decided to take precautions in such a circumstance and enlisted the assistance of Dr. Fate. The seal would ensure that no one could see the hero's memories, and they would not feel the seal's existence unless they were extremely powerful beings. No one would be interested in them because of the seal, and no one would kill them since they couldn't see any memories. It was the ideal metric for the scenario. In addition, Batman had obtained a protection seal and a locator seal so that the Jason Todd situation would not be repeated. Jason Todd was the second Robin, and he was killed by the Joker. It was one of Bruce's most traumatic experiences, and it had put him to the test. He was a man of values who had promised never to kill and never to carry a gun. He had beaten the Joker to the point of death and intended to wring his frail neck, but he couldn't because Superman had stopped him and forced him recall his promises. Batman came to a halt, but this just exacerbated the family's problems. It was the reason Richard and Bruce split up. That incident strained their relationship because Richard wanted to kill the Joker but was stopped by Bruce. Nagato, I'm not sure what you're trying to say. Why were you forced to do this? What did you notice that I am not aware of? Why couldn't you discuss your concerns with me? We weren't even related. Is he actually deserving of your sacrifice? He may be stronger than both of us, but like you stated, it is futile, so why did this happen? Did you waver in your weakness? Conan wondered, staring at the grave she had dug for her buddy. She had obeyed his orders without question, but now that he was gone, she was alone. She had no company, no pal to share her pain with. Conan had nothing good to say about Naruto. To her, he was just a small child who had never seen the outside world. He was a person who didn't deserve to think about leading because he hadn't yet experienced the world's pain. Are you sure about digging a grave here? Naruto inquired as he approached her spot. She'd gone deep into the woods and dug a small burial for herself. It's good enough. Did you find anything? Conan gathered herself and turned around to see the boy's spirit restored. She could tell he had a strong mind because he didn't get stressed out in unfamiliar situations. Even in this scenario where he had lost contact with everything he knew, he remained at ease. Naruto nodded, not caring what she did because Nagato was merely an enemy to him. He may have been his senior and a wonderful man, but he was wrong and deserved to die. He had no feelings for the man other than grief that he was never stopped from becoming this monster that day. I received the information and can conclude that this world is more dangerous than ours. From now on, we will remain in the shadows to avoid attention, understood? Naruto said calmly as he glanced at the icy but attractive woman. He was the sort to appreciate beauty, but his displeasure with her earlier deeds kept him away. She was only alive because he needed her and promised Nagato that he would keep her safe. She was also fortunate to have avoided massacres like the rest of the Akatsuki and was one of the peaceful members who assisted her village. Naruto offered her a second shot at life by taking the Rinnegan. Otherwise, he would have slaughtered her. He had extracted her soul for the information, so he had no use for her, but he let her live because she was from his home world and deserved a second chance. He could see she was down and out. Even if her deeds were few and far between, she regretted them. Nagato had stated that she did not engage in illegal activity and instead assisted with village management. She'd tried talking to him, but he'd never listened. Naruto could see he was talking the truth, and Nagato recognized him, so he provided him with reasons to let her live. The father would never have put Konan's life in Naruto's hands if he hadn't been told that Naruto killed everyone who was a scumbag criminal with no redeeming qualities. "What do you plan to do now?" Konan inquired, putting his character to the test. She was aware of his actions and background, but she wanted to see it for herself. She was curious about what Nagato saw in him at the final moment. She was curious to see if he was worthy of his gaze. "The same as always, train, fight, learn new things, enjoy life, and kill scum. I intend to continue on the same path, but with a slight difference because this world has more powerful beings than ours. I don't intend to make my power known this time around, and I am going to help the world improve from the shadows as much as I can." Naruto smiled knowingly. He could tell that the query was a kind of affirmation. "Why do you intend to help this world?" Konan didn't mind that he grasped her motive and asked again. "Justice. I never limited my range to one place. I would never allow injustice to exist. I was born for it and brought up for it. Remember it well, Konan. From now on you are my follower and I will show you how to improve the world." Your group could have done it back home easily as well, but Nagato had already lost his mind and most of your people were utter scum. Naruto explained as he took her hand and carved a seal on her palm. Konan didn't fight back or block it. She had come to accompany him. He was the last person she had any contact with, and he was picked by her lord and brother. His responses were pleasant and devoid of deceit. If he had given the wrong answer, she planned to kill herself and destroy the Rinnegan. She would never let someone like Nagato back into her life. They'd made the mistake before, and there was no reason to do it again. "The language?" Konan inquired as he concluded his sentence. "It's different, so rely on your genjutsu skills to communicate for now and learn the languages. We're going to Gotham now and we'll clean up the place while looking for the League of Shadows. I've lost my connection to Konoha, so I need another big shadow organization under me for my goals. These are normal human assassins, but they seem to have resources and influence." Naruto replied and explained things she would have asked before she asked. "Understood. Store Nagato in the storage seal, because people here can also clone others and use genetic manipulation better than Orochimaru." Naruto didn't care where the guy was laid to rest, but he didn't want someone from this world researching the corpse. Konan comprehended his words, and paper spread about her as it pulled out Nagato before he vanished into the storage seal on her breast. "I will cremate him once we find a proper place," Konan mumbled, not wanting anyone to dishonor her family's dead. "Alright. Let's go. Remember to avoid attention," Naruto stated as they flew towards Gotham while being invisible. Jiraiya had taught his disciples Jiraiya's technique. Konan flew using her wings, whereas Naruto flew with his wind manipulation skills. While Naruto was gone, Richard and Barbara carried on as usual. They left the camping gear by the river and brought out the fishing gear. Life had been quite chaotic and full of ups and downs. Richard could feel his spirit tiring from all of this work. They were putting their lives on the line for people, but the system was determined to keep them from doing so. He wanted to kill the villains, but he couldn't. The system demanded that they do it. They were despised by the government because they were not under their control. They weren't naive enough to ignore the fact that they were manipulating public opinion to blame the heroes for failing to care for the villain rather than accepting responsibility. When the heroes murdered the villains, they became felons. The system would have more ammunition to brainwash the people. Not every hero was focused with not killing like Batman. Because of these circumstances, the majority of them were unable to participate. Superman was in the worst possible situation since he was an extraterrestrial. People would demand his head if he took one incorrect step. Batman had been attempting to repair the system, but it was a difficult task due to the several forces at work. Villains may take advantage of it, and the heroes didn't want to use too many tactics for fear of losing their way and taking control of everything. Sigh. Why is our world so damn unlucky? Richard groaned as he sat with his fishing gear alongside the river. He came here to unwind and get away from the stresses of everyday life. I suppose that is a rhetorical question, but the answer you seek is corruption, fear, and selfishness. If the government did its job and killed the criminals instead of attempting to use them, we would have a better life. Barbara whipped her long ponytail and sat down near him. She was a lovely and clever lady with a feisty demeanor. Her father worked for the police department, so she had grown up knowing a lot of these details. The world had changed and new technology had arrived, but the police were still unarmed. The police were unprepared to deal with the new environment. The days of police violence are long gone. It was uncommon in this era since the police actually feared the people. It was one of the most dangerous jobs imaginable because anyone could turn out to be an alien, ghost, or metahuman. Death was common, but no one gave a damn and only sponsored their study in the establishment of special teams. The most recent was the Suicide Squad, but there were others such as the Justice League of America, Team 7, and others. Anyone with knowledge could understand right away that this was a ruse. The higher-ups didn't want their future victims to be accidentally killed, and they also utilized human lives to gain emotional control. This system had no spirit and considered human life as a disposable resource. That is an ideal world, where we could have worked with them instead of fighting against them. Let's not talk about it because it will make my mood worse. Richard opted not to dwell on these thoughts because they frustrated him. The system wanted to dominate them out of fear and selfishness, but the heroes couldn't let it because the government never represented justice and dealt in dirty deals. It wasn't even some top-secret operation. Everyone and their mothers knew what type of shit the government was up to, but nobody cared unless the shit slapped them in the face. So, how has your relationship been going since you rejected my confession? Barbara asked, with a sardonic smile. Richard sighed as he looked at that smile. He questioned why he chose Barbara over Cyborg, Beast Boy, or Superboy. Then he remembered that they were all bad at what he needed right now. Terrible, just terrible. I've realized how dangerous a relationship with a super being is. Every moment feels like I'm on the verge of death. Corey is becoming frustrated, and I am also dissatisfied with the situation. We can't even be intimate because Corey might accidentally murder me. Ha 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 ha, you so deserve that. You know you're a horrible human being. But you still love me, and I am loved by the masses. Barbara said with a smug smile and a suggestive movement of her brows. Though the situation is laughable, showing your lack of future planning because you were too happy, I can see the pain you guys are going through. Why not ask Superman to make you part Kryptonian? That would be the best deal here. I thought of that, but I doubt he'll let me do it, and I'm also opposed to changing my species in that way. Richard rolled his eyes. You will have to make a compromise because Corey is emotional and driven by instinct. Are you telling me to give up being human? Well, this is the path you chose, or you could backtrack and come to me. Barbara giggled. It had been a year since that incident, and she had moved on from Richard. She merely found it amusing to tease him about it. An appealing proposal, but I still love Corey. Perhaps I could just get some minor enhancements and learn magic for additional assistance, which could improve my fighting chances as well. The first option is possible, and you could visit Veritas for it, but the second option will take too long, and you will become old before learning anything useful. Barbara shut him down, as she had previously expressed interest in the mystic arts after meeting Zatanna and Raven. Well, let's think about it some more. I don't want to regret my decision, Richard said as he cast his line into the water and caught a fish. He let it go and began talking to Barbara about unimportant matters to unwind after a stressful few weeks. Naruto and Conan arrived in Gotham in a flash. They were utilizing invisibility jutsu as well as anti-detection seals to evade discovery. It was a whole new universe. Naruto had once again become one of the weak players in this frightening environment. In the ninja world, he was the monster that everyone feared confronting. He was Konoha's ultimate weapon. His power was so overwhelming that Pain had to utilize deception to combat him. Pain had caught them off guard and forced the fight to take place inside Konoha. Naruto had to battle while also defending his surroundings. He was unable to use any power-ups because Pain had informed him that he would murder everyone. He was equivalent to Pain in his normal form, and with any of his power-up skills, he could destroy anyone in the ninja world. Regardless, when he saw that people were being evacuated and Naruto was forcing him away from the city, Pain used the charged almighty push. Naruto was delayed in responding because he was distracted by a civilian, and the attack devastated the town. When he entered Sage mode, it broke his restrictions and turned into a one-sided bloodbath. Naruto was very near to Madara, who had faced Hashirama, in terms of power, and he had mastered numerous talents to give him an advantage. Because of his Uzumaki blood, he was gifted with seals and barriers. Tsunade had strengthened the blood through genetic manipulation. Naruto was the most powerful weapon. He was being groomed to be Emperor Mankind. He was taught everything he needed to know to get to that level. He was surrounded by top fighters and given everything he needed to flourish. He'd acquired blood from the Uzumaki, Senju, Uchiha, and Kaguya clans blended into his system. It was a perilous process that would have killed anybody else, but Naruto was the Kyuubi vessel, therefore he escaped unscathed. After talking with Kyuubi about interfering with his system and tightening the seal, he had complete chakra control. He had complete command over all aspects. He specialized in wind and water but used them all, including ice, magma, and Mokuton. He had command of his bone structure and blood. He had exceptional regen powers acquired through severe training. He had his body chopped into parts to train the talent, and he could now regen his entire arm in nanoseconds. He was a full monster until chakra entered his system. Even breaking his head would not kill him. Even with all of his strength, he couldn't defeat Madara. Naruto was aware of Madara and Hashirama because they were his objectives. He was raised to outperform them, to make them appear weak. There should be no equals for the Emperor of Mankind. Danzo had instilled this worldview in him, and the others had silently consented to it. They hadn't spoken anything, but they were implying it in some way. Madara was only in his 30s when he was recorded. If he continued to live and grow, Naruto would have no chance against him at his current level. Naruto couldn't take the chance, so he remained in the foreign land. Madara, for whatever reason, desired the Kyuubi and refused to begin without it. As a result, this was the best option. Naruto considered questioning the heroes after reading the memories of humans, but that was only for a brief moment. He could never put his trust in them. They were on opposing sides. He'd be the same as a villain in their eyes. He might wait for his strength to expand, but if these lunatics found out about his planet and his ambitions, they would imprison him. His purpose was to bring about peace and harmony, but his tactics were not always acceptable to these individuals. He didn't care about people's lives after a certain point, and he had been killing since the age of 10. His hands were stained with the blood of tens of thousands of filth. Since the day it was agreed that Naruto would be raised for such a role, Konoha has stopped taking any inappropriate type of mission because Naruto would have slaughtered them all. Under the light of the sun, Gotham City concealed its evil and appeared to be any other metropolis. It has everything a human would need except a sufficient amount of greenery. It had a lot of factories, which meant a lot of pollution. It was a city that didn't care about its citizens, and the people in general were rather chilly. It was a city that promoted immoral behavior. It was a land that had corrupted its people from the top down. It was a city of crooked officials, criminal gangs, and powerful villains. Most of the time, the only hero they had to deal with such issues was Batman and his family. Other heroes had to step in at times. This was never enough, but no one left. Regardless of how horrible Gotham was, it was still their city. It was safer than other places because it didn't have any top-tier supervillains like Metropolis. That city had Superman, but the villains were the type that could accidentally annihilate the city. Looking at such things, Gotham residents were content with what they had and only desired to better their city. Nonetheless, the architecture and technology impressed Naruto. The pair had landed on a high-rise structure and were taking in everything they could see. Naruto improved his vision and could see for miles. Unlike his expectations, there was no barrier around the city. He lacked the necessary information to draw any conclusions. This world was full of magic. He remembered a gorgeous and lovely woman named Zatanna, and she could have easily done it based on what he observed. Raven, the dark beauty, could have done it. Or he was simply making assumptions in the absence of specific evidence. Naruto chose to investigate the explanation later, although it was beneficial to him and allowed him evade detection. Naruto had never seen so many people in one location before returning to the city. It was teeming with people. Naruto had abandoned his sage mode, or he would have been appalled by the location. He remembered having a similar sensation in the land of rain. What do you intend to do now? Conan inquired as she surveyed the city. It was different, yet her cold, lifeless heart could only feel apathy. We need to find a place to stay, and then I'll scout the area for more information, Naruto said, glancing at his buddy, who was not going to make his stay any more pleasant. Conan was also not trusted, and this was her last chance at life because she wasn't far gone. He simply believed that it was preferable to force the criminal filth to work and repay the world for their crimes. If he could not find a purpose for them, they would be executed immediately. This occurred after he was convinced that the individual had no right to exist based on their life choices. He offered everyone a second chance, but only with his supervision and a bomb connected to their skin. This was merely a luxury granted to mankind because his dominion was not yet the world's rule. There were no second chances once he became monarch since everyone would know who he was. Breaking the rule would imply that they did not respect the regulations and did not care whether or not he took action. How? Conan wondered. We're going to borrow or steal a place from some criminal. I thought you'd be against breaking rules, isn't that a criminal offense? Conan inquired, intrigued by his mentality. What was he truly thinking? I am quite flexible on this subject because it does not really harm anyone. Nobody will miss an empty room, and we will be like wraiths before we find a good place. I will steal and break into places if I consider it for the greater good. Only when it comes to people's lives do I not compromise. I do not accept sacrifices. Material goods aren't as important, and it's for the good of the planet, not personal greed. Naruto spoke in greater depth than he intended since he wanted to help her comprehend his attitude. If she thought he was a hypocrite, she might not change, forcing him to quit the relationship. He also appreciated having someone question him. This was something he had certainly been taught. You will never succeed if you surround yourself with yes men. He comprehended those words, and he was surrounded by people like Satsuki, Ino, Sakura, Hinata, Temari, Gaara, Shikamaru, and Sai. They were not yes men, and they questioned his motives and judgments. Conan nodded, and she deemed his response suitable because he did not overextend himself. She had no problem stealing when it was necessary, but the target had to be someone who wouldn't notice it on their wallet. Naruto, on the other hand, would only steal from those he thought were a little bit nasty. He'd check first and then determine whether or not to empty them. Let's look for a place where you can rest, whispered Naruto, and Conan blinked, taken aback by his remarks. Despite his distaste for her, he was nonetheless polite and concerned about her mental health. The two flew over the city for a time, seeing everything from above, until Naruto's ear picked up on something. It was a cry for assistance. Naruto dashed towards the area, and Conan trailed behind. It was taken from a multi-story apartment building. It was a penthouse on the top floor. Naruto noticed security but lulled them to sleep with his breath. Poison creation was one of the abilities he had learnt, and it was a technique Shizune and Enko used. Naruto had been subjected to a variety of poisons and other substances in order to strengthen his resilience. So making sleeping powder was simple. Naruto dashed inside the room where he heard the cry. It was a big space, not a small room. Naruto had mapped it out with wind to avoid utilizing pure chakra, which could leave a trace. The space was enormous and shaped like a maze. The penthouse took up the entire top floor. It was spacious and luxurious. The place appeared to be used for immoral purposes. Inside the room, he discovered a couple dressed inappropriately and playing with an underage girl. The girl appeared to be 13 years old. She was completely naked. The whip that the woman was holding had left bruises on her skin. Her hands and legs were bound to the bed while the fat man licked her inappropriately. It was a revolting scene, but nothing he hadn't seen before. People from the top to the bottom will engage in such behavior. People at the top, on the other hand, did it with impunity and without fear of penalties. Naruto didn't say anything, and he put them all to sleep like a ghost. He needed them to be alive in order to read their memories. Before reading the little girl's memory, Naruto covered her up and repaired her wounds. It wasn't pleasant. She had been orphaned. Her mother had died before she was born, and her father had died before she was born. While working at a restaurant, her mother attracted the attention of a gang member. After she rebuffed him, the thug took her address and entered her home at night. Everyone in the city's poor part was jittery and a light sleeper. When she heard a noise, her mother awoke and went to get her gun. She didn't say anything and shot as soon as the man's shadow appeared. The mobster died, but it didn't take long for the group to exact its retribution. Because he was a member under Two-Face, the fate of the mother was decided by a coin toss. Life or death, she was quickly shot and died, while the small girl was sold as a sex slave. She was attractive and delicate, with white hair and crimson eyes. Her small physique appealed to pedophiles despite the fact that she was 16 years old and not 12 or whatever. Her mother had only died 2 months prior, according to the latest records, and the small child had only endured nightmares since then. She couldn't even commit suicide. She was acquired by some men and covertly transported to the penthouse, where she was instructed to go through the maze. It was all a game. She needed to find a golden orb in order to escape safely. But she couldn't find it, and the area was riddled with traps to make her life difficult. She managed to flee the couple, and they apprehended her before strapping her to the bed and abusing her for some time. Naruto let the girl to sleep peacefully while his chakra flowed through her body to help her mental state. She was on the verge of collapsing. With his mind control, he offered her good dreams and pushed her to move on from her loss. He walked away from the girl and toward the man. He appeared repulsive, overweight, and out of shape. His chin and belly fat jiggled when he breathed. Naruto does not judge individuals based on their appearance and placed his hand on the man. Mr. George Harrison. He owned the building and several others throughout the city. He owned stock in pharmaceutical firms, among other things. He had ties to the underground and used their services for his heinous hobbies. He enjoyed eating. He was a big fan of luxuries. He enjoyed sex, but not the regular type because it didn't work for him any longer. He was a perverted bastard who was addicted to tears and the taboo. He used blackmail to have sex with the wives of the people who lived in his apartment. He also enjoyed having sex with pudding people and young girls, and he killed them after breaking them. Stella, his wife, enjoyed doing similar terrible things. She was a vicious woman who got high off of hurting people. They were all able to get away with it since Batman couldn't be everywhere at once. There weren't enough heroes to cover up every crime. They kept it quiet and performed good actions in public. This was their true personality, despite the fact that they were fine individuals in the outside world. Naruto killed both of them and collected some of their blood and hair in a jar using the data in his head. He used atomic dismantling to delete their bodies after securing the items. It was one of Iwa's secrets, along with explosion style and golem generation. Naruto had infiltrated Iwa, obtained the secrets, and even fought the Tsuchikage. By removing the vessels, the Akatsuki had done him a favor. It was tragic, but he couldn't change their deaths and exploited the circumstance. Conan observed his smooth performance. There was no hesitancy, indicating that he was used to acting in this manner. She agreed with his response and didn't need to see their memories to form an opinion. From now on, we'll be staying here. Do you know how to use true transformation? Naruto finished and turned to Conan. Unfortunately for the remaining victims, he was unable to save everyone. The world had to change, or everyone would be marked with a seal that would kill them if they carried out such deeds. Naruto had such a seal, but he didn't want to use it right now because it would murder everyone without giving them a second opportunity. If he committed something that terrible, he would be hunted down and murdered like an animal. No, never needed it. Conan was aware that it was a useful skill, but she had never used it. She didn't want to hide her appearance from the world, so she took the sins on her body. In terms of rank, difficulty, and functions, true transformation differed from transformation technique. Every ninja was aware of transformation, which could change the user's body into whatever they wished. However, it did not conceal the user's aura or fragrance. True transformation utilized items from other individuals to convert the user into them. It altered the aura, speech, and odor. Unless it came down to personality, no one would know. This would allow them to remain hidden in plain sight, and no one would be able to match them with their true shapes. Don't resist, I'll give it to you, Naruto said as he closed the gap between them. Conan felt unfamiliar memories invade her mind as she said those words. She recalled using the jutsu, and Naruto passed her the woman's hair. Conan didn't need to be warned twice before transforming into Stella. Stella was a lovely woman with black and white hair. Naruto also became a fat jerk and created a clone to give Jackie, the little girl, to Metropolis with some money and wisdom. Keeping her with him was an option, but she'd be in danger, and he didn't want weak little civilians about him. They would be an impediment. He taught Jackie Jenin fighting techniques as well as some conventional skills. She could easily find work, and she also received some money from him to help her survive. He booked her a room in a tiny motel and abandoned her on the bed. Metropolis was better and worse than Gotham in various aspects, but for two reasons: no gang had significant control in the area. Clark Kent and Lex Luthor Naruto also altered her memories so that she didn't recall the terrible couple and never saw them. With that out of the way, Naruto altered the guards' memories so they didn't recall falling asleep. He also applied explosive seals to their bodies. They'd be dead once he let them go for the day. These folks were likewise bad since they participated in their owner's heinous crimes. Naruto and Conan looked around after dealing with the other concerns. It was a nice property, and it looked nicer than his Konoha estate. Naruto and Conan sat in another room as he scribbled down all the information he had gathered on paper for future reference and for Conan. She was poring over it as he produced it at breakneck speed. Within a minute, he had jotted down what he remembered seeing. "I'm not in a hurry to change the world, especially since it's quite dangerous. Our main goal is to get stronger and build a new team, so I'll be focusing on that, and you'll be training as well." Naruto set down the pen and glanced at Conan. "I've already reached my limits, and I won't be able to grow unless I use drugs. I will help you grow stronger. You saw what I did. That method can also be used to increase the chakra levels of others. I will help you grow and teach you Sage Mode. We need to cover all bases, and I can't move alone." Naruto informed her his plan, and she looked at him in disbelief. He smiled when she broke her silence with that remark. Conan was visibly surprised because he had just told her that he was going to teach her Sage Mode, which was a secret that would allow her to attain Nagato's level of strength. "Are you sure?" "I am always certain. I know you are not a bad person, and I need you. Otherwise, I might lose my way," Naruto responded calmly. One of his methods of manipulating others was to use pleasant and alluring phrases. "Understood. I will follow your plan," Conan said calmly as he stood there watching him. "Then rest for the time being. We'll train tonight," Naruto said, leaving Conan in her chamber. He entered Sage Mode while sitting on the sofa in the room he had picked. Naruto was closely connected to the planet and nature as a whole while in Sage form. Nature encompassed everything around him, including trees, rocks, stars, the moon, and everything else in the universe. It was one of the greatest powers in the ninja world, and no one had ever thoroughly investigated it because it was difficult to maintain for a long time. Naruto had been like a frog in the well, but now he had witnessed power beyond his wildest dreams. He realized there were no boundaries, so he could go crazy with it. He wished, but he needed to repair the Kyuubi's condition and gradually develop it. Sage Mode meant fusing chakra and nature energy, therefore he could only take nature energy that matched his chakra level. He desired to remain in the form at all times because it provided him with permanent improvements in physical stats and even chakra quality. But he had to put that aside because he needed the Kyuubi to cease. To return to the matter at hand, the planet was sick, and he could feel it. Everything on the globe had harmed it, and it was unhappy. The world's natural energy was abundant, but it had to be used with caution. In other aspects, he thought the planet's energy was strange. "It felt like I was engaging with someone's chakra, which indicated that the planet was alive." He didn't feel irritated by him, but rather a want to connect with him. The globe was beckoning to him. It was a tempting offer. He felt obligated to respond to the call. His thoughts were drawn to a land of pure calm, where there was green everywhere and he felt relaxed. He felt embraced by the world, and his connection to nature seemed to grow stronger. It was barely a split second, yet it felt like an eternity. That was strange. Even the planet is alive now and charmed by this handsome look. "Damn, I am good," Naruto grinned and resolved to investigate it later. He had no chance now against such a force. It could easily hold him and accomplish that, so doing something else wouldn't be difficult. Leaving that notion aside, Naruto used his Sage Mode to investigate the city. He was a sensor, and he could go much higher with Sage Mode. His senses could encompass the entire city, and he could detect every living being within it. He was seeking for someone who had a life force that was greater than the ordinary human life force, i.e. not so human. Naruto sought such beings for two reasons. For starters, they may serve as his servants. 2. They would be better knowledgeable than ordinary people. Naruto was quick to pick up on the indications. There weren't many, and the difference wasn't significant, as the signal was comparable to a genin. That was to be expected, given that it was Gotham and not another metropolis. If there had been a significant signal, he would have been more careful. Everything in the contemporary world was unknown to him, thus he may become entangled in things he didn't understand. One of those things was magic, while the others were advanced technologies that were not available to ordinary people. Naruto created clones with the goals in mind. He made 4 since he could detect 4 targets at the time. Naruto had no intention of entering the field with his body at this point. From the shadows, he planned to manage everything. His clones were as powerful as he was. They simply didn't have his chakra levels since he divided them. He created the clones with only 10% of his chakra, which was divided by 4. The clones had his personality and everything. It was wonderful, but it would have been ideal if he didn't have to worry about his memories being discovered. Some people could catch his clones and absorb them in order to obtain some of his memories. This was the risk posed by the clones. To address this issue, Naruto used his mental skill to create a mental barrier and control the clones like robots. Using his original skill, parallel thoughts, he could create empty clones while directing them with his own body. He could concentrate completely on 10 subjects, implying that he had 10 minds in one. It meant he could be in 10 places at once thanks to his clones. While the clones walked toward the targets, Naruto's true body sat on the sofa. Naruto glided through the air, unnoticed, towards Gotham Cemetery. It was a gloomy spot with a reputation for drawing ghosts and other paranormal creatures. Naruto sensed the signal from within an old structure in this location. He had the impression that it was sleeping. Naruto didn't hesitate and went straight for it. Naruto discovered the monster lying upside down in a dark room after entering the exceedingly ancient and crumbling building. When he looked at the grotesque creature, he could tell that the animalistic desires were outweighing the human side. Yes, there was a human side because it was human. Naruto couldn't understand much without making contact, so he flew to the target and tapped it on the head. Naruto might use the gentle fist style to block their pressure points and immobilize enemies. The beast couldn't move after being smacked in the back of the head. He could tell it was human from reading the memories, and the longer he stayed in the form, the less human it got. Kirk was the man-bat. Dr. Kirk Langstrom created the famed man-bat serum, a rare concoction capable of transforming the user into a monstrous bat monster known as the man-bat. Though he designed it to help the deaf and blind, because of its transient adverse effects, many people, including Langstrom, had taken advantage of it, frequently in the name of vigilantism. It was also nearly used by the League of Shadows to build a man-bat army. Kirk utilized it with good intentions, but the metamorphosis altered his mentality, causing him to act criminally at times. He'd battled alongside and against Batman. He wasn't all that horrible, and he hadn't committed any heinous crimes, but his addiction was destructive to everyone. He was useful because of his brains and strength. Naruto used the genuine transformation jutsu by placing his hand on the monster's head while it scowled at him. Using his mental talents, he changed the monster into a buff version of the Doctor and enhanced his human side. Kirk opened his eyes to the scene of the room, his gaze filled with disbelief. He was fully conscious of what occurred when he was altered. He was imprisoned like a small bug, and there was no way for him to fight back. He had disguised himself to steal from a jewelry store in order to flee to this location. The serum took some time to wear off. He was fortunate in that he was able to keep it from killing anyone, but he did occasionally end up doing other crimes, which was inconvenient. He had cured it once before, but resurrected it because he recognized it was better to be a monster in this gloomy world. Living helpless meant that your life was in the hands of others, therefore he made a stronger serum and drank it. It was meant to offer him more control as well, but instead it caused him to lose control while the monster grew stronger. It could lift 5 tons and travel at speeds approaching Mach 1. It could withstand gunfire, but only powerful weapons could puncture its body. He was dependent on the serum. It was one of the side effects that prompted him to create a permanent version because the original was just transitory. He thought it was finished when he lost control until Batman found him and helped him, but someone else discovered him. It was more startling than being cured because his monster body had been converted into a human shape while retaining all of his monstrous powers. Who exactly is he? What is he thinking? Kirk thought as he couldn't raise any protest against the strange man's dark gaze that sent chills down his spine. Thank you, kind sir, for your assistance. Is there anything else I can do for you? Kirk chose to be cordial rather than panic and be killed. Naruto looked at him in a different light. He was clad in his dark armor, which could change size at his command. Armor improved his combat powers and durability. Experts created the armor for the future leader. The armor fully hid him and made individuals appear little in comparison. He had a fighting axe created by sage weapons to go with his armor. He wasn't always employing the axe form because it could shift shape on command. He either wielded an axe or a lance. It was named EA, and he had the golden chains known as Enkidu for assistance, which could be reinforced further by his adamantine chains from the Uzumaki bloodline. He intended to maintain order. They weren't his pals, therefore they didn't need to know his appearance or name. Kirk was beneficial to him because the man was knowledgeable about genetics, and he needed such knowledge on his side now that he didn't have Tsunade. Kirk, I want you to serve under me for genetic research and hero business. In exchange, I will pay you for your services and will not put you in prison for putting the city in danger because of your addiction, Naruto said neutrally as he glanced at the doctor. Kirk was astonished the man was aware of his situation and suspected the stranger had read his memories. His comments were highly tempting because he wanted to help people while also earning money for research. Kirk understood he didn't mean placing him in human prison after seeing his abyss-like eyes. I don't want to go to hell, she says. I still have a wife waiting for me at home, and there is so much more to life. I'll do it, Kirk said, seeing no other option. Good, now I'm going to increase your powers and put a sign that you work for me. Remember, never try to cross me. I am very nice most of the time, but I hate scum and traitors. Naruto gripped his hand and peered into his eyes, causing him to quiver as he sensed the murderous intent. He almost spit his trousers because it was so terrible. Naruto channeled his chakra into him, enhancing his body. The process was frequently time-consuming and could not be completed in a matter of minutes. Outsiders had to wait weeks for an effect to manifest, but Naruto's chakra was extremely potent, and he was only releasing trace amounts into the body. The chakra would gently disperse while providing the necessary push to their body. This was simply a trial run, and if they proved beneficial, he planned to completely train them into his elite assassin squad. He would improve them every day, enhancing their physical capabilities until they were at least 10% of his power. Naruto also put a mental barrier in their brains because he didn't want anyone reading their minds and learning anything about the gang. He also installed a seal that would shut down Kirk on his command. The seal was the caged bird. He didn't use the explosion seal on Kirk because he wasn't a true evil. Finally, he bestowed wind power on Kirk. It wasn't much, but it provided him with an additional advantage. Kirk was excused from reality because he didn't have such troubles as the others. He needed some time to adjust to his newfound abilities. Naruto taught him fundamental fighting skills and body control, so it didn't take long. He was always moving around and lived in an unstable world. With a single flick of his palm, he could literally set the air on fire and create immense havoc. An earthquake would be caused by a single stomp from his foot. On a smaller scale, it was akin to Superman. However, Naruto liked it and did not find it bothersome. It was his speed advantage that allowed him to live such a long life in such a short period. His pace increased rapidly, and he participated in numerous activities in a single hour. 1 hour was significantly different for him than it was for a normal person, because he could travel much quicker than sound and his mind worked on that scale. Returning to Kirk, he recognized Naruto's desire to rule the world and improve it. He had a lot to say about it, but he was frightened to ask questions. He didn't know Naruto and could only watch how things unfolded before attempting to intervene. He agreed that the world was corrupt and that something needed to be done about it. The heroes had become stagnant and would not bring about change. Kirk returned home a pleased man with a new purpose after a short talk. He could now fully control his strength and morph into a bat whenever he pleased. Naruto had seen him off and informed him that he would summon him when necessary, using the seal. Naruto recognized Poison Ivy as the person giving him the feeling of nature. He walked towards her, undetectable to the naked eye, and discovered her in an abandoned factory. She had planted a garden in one of the buildings with her lethal plants. She detected his presence as soon as he landed since he gave out a natural vibe, and she was taken aback. She had never seen anything like it before and was pleasantly delighted because she mistook it for a comrade. Except for Harley, a close friend, she had never felt this way before. Only plants merited her love and attention. She would murder for flowers. She had no regard for human life. Pam discovered that her visitor was armored, and the red demonic eyes did not give off a nice aura. But she ignored such frills because she was interested in learning more about him. "Welcome to my humble abode, love. How may I assist you?" Pam chose to look around in a nice manner. Her body language and tone were seductive, as she was accustomed to influencing others. There was also an aphrodisiac in the air. Naruto grabbed her into his arms without saying anything. Naruto had slipped through Pamela's mental defenses and taken what he needed before she could react. As seals swarmed across her body, she couldn't move in his clutches. Naruto always likes to have data on hand before speaking with someone like Pamela. Poison Ivy was a scientist who strove to increase the rate of vegetation in nature to combat the difficulties brought by humans because she preferred nature to humans. Pamela Isley was born with a skin problem called photosensitivity. Despite the fact that the doctor had prescribed a lotion to protect her, Pamela's cruel father had forbade her from going outside at all. When her mother let her play outside, he aggressively punched her in the face, leaving her with a black eye. Pamela's mother strolled outdoors and began gardening as if nothing had happened. When she saw her daughter, she explained that she enjoyed gardening because the flowers listen to her and, on occasion, speak back to her if she remains extremely quiet. When Pamela inquired about the black eye, her mother informed her that it was nothing to be concerned about. The abuse persisted. Pamela's father purchased his wife's forgiveness with flowers every time he slapped her, and her garden grew as a result. That's how Pamela discovered that flowers might be used to manipulate people. She did, however, witness human cruelty when her father murdered her mother in cold blood after having had enough of her disobedience to him. Before getting caught, he buried his now ex-wife under her own garden, her flesh rotting and now feeding the very flowers she cultivated. He was convicted guilty of domestic violence and murder during the trial and sentenced to life in prison. Pamela was then placed with a relative. Pamela invented customized medications in college, doling out pheromone tablets to examine their effects. When the university heard of her conduct, she was expelled and imprisoned pending a criminal investigation. She had, however, already used her medicines to get control of Dean. The charges were dropped, and she received her summa cum laude diploma. Pamela went to see her father in prison for the first time since her mother's murder after graduation. He had sat in defiance, staring at her and waiting for her to make the first move. She eventually chose to do what made the most sense. She rose from her seat and kissed him on the lips. He was dead the next morning, and the toxin that killed him was untraceable. Pamela landed an internship at Wayne Enterprises' R&D site right out of college, shortly after the company merged with Kane Chemical. She contributed to the development of pharmaceuticals and aesthetic applications, but she was more concerned with the environment as a whole because she thought the modern world was unsightly and nasty. She was yet another soul tainted by their environment. She had killed people and used others as instruments to achieve her ambitions. She was one of Gotham's most dangerous criminals. But, over time, she had shifted from fighting Batman to acting in a less risky manner, despite the fact that she sought to make forests spring up and needed money for study. She hadn't given up on turning Gotham green and the people into green supporters. "I am here for you. I want you to serve me from now on and atone for your sins," Naruto said after completing his memory check. She had a horrible past, but he couldn't care less. None of this gave her a reason to turn into a monster. He'd witnessed more horrible stories than the woman, and he'd killed those individuals with his hands. These folks would tell him that he didn't understand and never would because he had a privileged upbringing. Naruto had a perfect existence. He was adored by all. He was pampered. He possessed the best of everything. For a time, his deceased parents appeared in his mind and taught him everything they knew. He gathered memories of others' experiences to help him improve. Even though he had such a large responsibility, it was a wonderful existence. He did, however, comprehend them. The trainers made certain that Naruto did not pause and hesitate due of horrible backstories. He was trained to be a good guy, which could mean he would stop if he observed such things, so they made him experience the memories rather than just read about them. He has seen the lives of many criminals as well as wonderful people who had tragic lives. It strengthened him mentally and emotionally. With that, there was no way he was ever going to cry over their stories. Returning to Pamela, she was a lovely lady. One of the most beautiful women he had ever seen, and he had seen a lot of them. She wore a green clothing made of plants and had long red hair and green eyes. Her beauty, however, did not make him feel important. It was her remarkable compatibility with his wood style and nature, as well as her sharp mind. He could read and absorb whatever they had within their heads, but he wouldn't understand their style of thinking or have the same opinions or thoughts. "Why should I do that?" Pam asked, staring at him as he seized her by the waist. "I will kill you if you dare to say no, this is not a choice. You will do it and repay the debt to the world," Naruto answered, showering Pam with his killing intent, forcing her to freeze and see visions of doom. "Give me another reason." "I'm not afraid of death," Pam said defiantly, gritting her teeth. "I know what you want. I know everything about you. I will make this world much better from now on and increase the vegetation around the globe. I will give new life to this planet. Look at me. What do you feel?" Naruto replied, speaking in an enticing tone to pique Pamela's interest in following him. Fear could only last so long, and if he continued to treat her like a bug, it wouldn't change the person. He instilled terror in them before presenting them with the ideal world. "I don't deal in empty words," Pam grumbled as she directed the plants to capture her assailant, bite him, and tear him apart. She wasn't a pushover just because she was attempting to change. She despised it when others treated her like a child. She did get a powerful sense from him and was attracted to him as a result, but she didn't appreciate being manipulated. Naruto locked his gaze on hers. He was aware that the woman had slain innocent people in her juvenile actions. She was a narrow-minded woman who didn't have the foresight to recognize she could have just relocated out of Gotham and done her thing in a variety of other cities. There were actually ghost villages and miles of absolutely barren land. She was more powerful than others. She had good skills and provided him the same sense of the universe. It appears that the world did not want her to die. With her expertise and ability, she could be valuable. He could offer her a more strong lift than others. She may be his right hand. Friendship and such relied on how things went, but she had no choice but to serve him. Naruto snapped his fingers and waved his palm in front of her eyes. Pam was taken aback when she witnessed her children desert her in favor of the invader. She couldn't keep them under control any longer. Naruto stepped on the ground, and flowers sprang from the asphalt. Pam felt as if she had no other option. He demonstrated that it wasn't only a mental game. It was the truth. He was linked to the rest of the globe. Nature adored him, as did her flora. That made her envious. She desired such power. Pam accepted the proposition because she trusted his natural instincts. She enjoyed his company and thought he was a man of action. She plainly had no feelings for him. She was curious to see what he would do and whether she could control him. She was completely confident in her appearance. She was a succubus who enchanted everyone, even the Bat family, who couldn't resist her beauty. "All right. I'll leave my sign on you and we'll talk about it." Naruto explained that he kissed Pam on the lips, startling her, to demonstrate his authority over her and to show her that he was the boss. He could see she was a woman who believed she could manipulate men and was very confident in her talents. Her lips were filled with the most potent poisons, yet he handled them with ease because his body had been poisoned since childhood. He has developed immunity to several toxins and diseases. Holding her securely, he slowly poured in his nature-clad chakra, boosting her strengths to a new level. She was compatible with his abilities, so the bump was significant. Her physical strength was increased, but her plant talent skyrocketed. Pam was a complete mess by the time he was finished with his 5-minute kiss. She was entirely consumed by this power, and the pleasure had rendered her mind blank. Naruto was well versed in the realms of pleasure. He might use his chakra to boost it. He could boost it even further by influencing the nerves and emotional part with his chakra. Naruto threw her on the grass and etched seals on her body. Betray him, and she explodes. He had destroyed the two things she had faith in with this deed. It obviously did not end there. Naruto stood motionless as Pamela began to shake. She was experiencing a nightmare. Naruto resurrected her lack of empathy towards people. He restored her shattered mind. He forced her to reconsider her actions and gave her the perspective of the victims. He compared those lives to the plants, and her love for the plants to those people's love for one another. She had expected him to treat her as a lover, but this completely demolished that illusion. He'd given her a chance, and he expected her to change or else she'd die instead of be free. Naruto admired beauty but was resistant to temptation. He'd received training for it, and his mission was always first. Pamela's entire body was soaked in sweat when she finally woke up after a 10-minute struggle. She turned to face him and scowled ferociously, though it seemed feeble now due to her state. She felt remorse and grief as a result of her conduct. Her only thought regarding her acts was that she could have done better, with no regard for the collateral damage. He was serious about reformation now, and he wasn't going to be pleasant about it. Don't stare so hard that your eyes fall out. Pamela, Pamela, you will either change or perish. I offered you the dream of a decent world, and that is what I plan to make a reality. It's up to you whether you want to be a part of it or not. Naruto stated calmly as he helped Pamela to her feet using the grass. She was feeling much better now. Her abilities had increased by several degrees, but she was mentally exhausted as a result of the trauma. Naruto's message was, "Follow me or die," and she understood it. She knew he'd take the others because of his immense power. He was amassing an army under his command. Unlike the previous heroes, he intended to rule the world. She had no idea how he would go about it, but that was his aim. It was insane, but she enjoyed it. He, my lord, I'll follow you. Pamela whispered under her breath as she hugged him. Because of his sage mode, she enjoyed his presence. She had succumbed and decided to follow him. She still hoped to keep his attention while occupying the primary seat to see where it went. The kiss was also quite pleasant. She had never experienced such increased pleasure before. It was always really a means to an end. Naruto had passed on information about his mission and his status as emperor. This was a fundamental concept that all of his subordinates would understand. Only he would know how he went about it, and they would know when it happened. He had to be wary of someone gathering too much information about his subordinates. To be continued.
That's it for this podcast. Thanks for listening to this video. Hope you did enjoy this part of the story. And if you did, like, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you all for helping support. And have a great day.